So starting out, this is going to be 4 cups of all-purpose flour. I've tried using the self-rising before, it didn't work as well. And then this recipe calls for buttermilk, but I never keep buttermilk on hand. So in this cup, I measured out 1.5 cups of just 2% milk, and then added about 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice. And that's just how I always make it. And I usually mix it up to begin with and set it to the side, and it'll thicken up like buttermilk. So next, you're going to be adding in, I don't remember what I did next, baking powder, 10 teaspoons of it. And this is a double order, or a double batch. You can half this if you want, but if you double the batch, you can always freeze your dough after you cut out your biscuits, and you would freeze them on a cookie sheet, and then once they're frozen, you can just put them all in a bag and throw them in the freezer. Okay, for the salt, it's going to be 2 teaspoons of salt. And then we're going to do 10 teaspoons of baking powder. Alright, and now I'm just adding in 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then you just want to stir all of your dry ingredients together in this bowl just so they're all combined. Okay, so now we're going to be adding the butter in. You're going to need 12 tablespoons of cold butter, and use real butter, not margarine. And it can be salted or unsalted, it doesn't matter. It just kind of depends on how salty you like your food. The biscuits I made at Mom's were with salted butter. These in the video are with unsalted. I don't think it makes that much of a difference, but if you don't want them on the kind of salty side, you can always just cut your salt in half or so that you add in at the beginning. So you want your butter to be really cold because you want it to melt slowly in the oven. So you want to get it out like right when you're ready to use it. And then I just cut it in little cubes and add it into the flour. You don't want to hold this in your hand very long because it's going to warm it up, and it really just has to stay cold. That's another reason I use that pastry cutter to cut the butter into the flour, is because you're not handling it so much with your hands and getting your butter hot. So then I just start mashing down all the butter, and I kind of twist the pastry cutter as I go. And the goal is you just don't want to have any big chunks of butter left. Here's the beginning. It's going to get kind of built up into your pastry cutter. Just push it all out back into your bowl and keep cutting it in until it's really small pieces. It'll take several minutes to do. So if you don't have a pastry cutter, you can do this with a fork. Just cutting your butter down into your flour. The pastry cutters, they can be kind of hard to find, but I think I found this one at Walmart. But you don't see them very often. I'm sure you could find one off Amazon. See how there's like still big chunks of butter? You don't want that, so we're gonna keep going. You want it so there's not any big chunks of butter, and then you want it kind of evenly distributed throughout the flour so that when you pick up like a little handful of flour, it tries to stick together some. So I'm testing it here to see if it's came together enough, which it really hadn't. And your flour will kind of sift down to the bottom of your bowl, so you'll have to kind of mix it in a little bit. So it's starting to clump together when I squeeze it. But there's no really big chunks of butter in there. That's how you want it. So then I just make a well in the middle of the flour. And this is where you'll add your milk in. So you can see this milk has gotten kind of thick. It will definitely coat the spoon. So I usually pour most of it in and then just save just a little bit. And then I usually end up having to use it towards the end of mixing it together. So you want to start in the middle of your well and just incorporate a little bit of that flour at a time. Just keep going around and adding in a little more and a little more every time you go around. And when you get your dough all mixed together, it shouldn't be sticky, but it should form together in a ball when you press it together. If it doesn't form together in a ball, you might need to add just a few more drops of milk to it so it'll all stick together. And like at the end here, you have to kind of just mix it, keep mixing it. It'll look like it's going to be too dry, but it'll all come together. Just try to avoid putting your hands in it because it's going to make your butter warm, which you don't want. Oh, and you should have preheated your oven when you started this to 425. Now we're gonna make it all stick into a ball and then we'll be rolling it out. And I like to use parchment paper just because then you can just throw it away. But like if you have a silicone mat or a cutting board or a cutting mat, whatever you want to use, just flour it a little bit and then you can put your dough on it. And I usually use a cookie cutter that's like 3 to 4 inches around. However big you want your biscuits to be. If you don't have a circle cookie cutter, you can just save a can from like a can of green beans or whatever and just cut the end off of both ends. You just want your cutter that you use to be pretty sharp. And then I just put some parchment paper on a cookie sheet. Just like that. So you want it to all be kind of in a ball that's stuck together pretty well, and then you're going to flatten it out. I try to keep it in like a rectangular shape just so it folds over on top of itself nice. So then once I get it pressed out to, I mean it's probably a 1/2 inch to 3/4 an inch thick, then I fold it over on top of itself and I just start pressing it out again. You don't want your surface to be too floury, or else when you press it out, it won't want to stick back to itself if it gets too much flour on it. So I just fold it over on itself, usually 4 times. Sometimes I lose count. Sometimes it's probably only 3 times. And then when I press it out the last time, I'll press it to about probably, let's see, I don't know, probably about 3/4 an inch thick, I would say. So folding it over on top of itself all of these times is what's going to make it have a lot of layers. Then you're going to take your cookie cutter and you just want to press down. You don't want to press down and twist it, because that's going to seal your edges and not give you the room for those layers to expand. So when you cut, just press it down straight and pull it out. Don't twist it. You see all the layers in there in the dough? I'm showing you, don't twist it. Just straight down, straight out. So then your leftover dough, I kind of push it all together like this, so it kind of keeps those layers in there, and just kind of mash it all together the best you can. Just try to avoid like kneading or working your dough too much, because it'll make your butter melt, and also it'll make them tougher. The more you work your flour, the tougher it'll get. And then when you put them on the tray, you don't want to put them too far apart. You want them to be kind of close together. We put them like less than a 1/2 inch apart.